I mean, it's always amazing to play something that was just born and the ink is still fresh.
And then you, in turn, you asked me about, I think, a couple of different ideas at that point. And you told me about the Pogosian family and how you'd done this concert with them. And yeah.
But this is first time that you guys thought of specifically piece for our family. So that was very touching. And of course, the first reaction is, wow, thank you. The second reaction is, oh my God, what if it's not a good piece and we hate it? We still need to do it. How do we get out of this situation? So I think we were really eagerly waiting for that MIDI from Timo. And when it came and we listened together here sitting at the couch, we were just so happy that it's really immediately, it was obvious. It's a very witty, talented, generously scored, very creatively conceived piece, and we were like, all right, let's do this.
I really like it. It's a lot of fun.
Plus the fact that their ensemble was a clarinet quintet, which is, of course, a beautiful ensemble, and not with a huge repertoire, but with, I'd say, a very higher than average quality repertoire, and something that I hadn't written for and had always sort of had in the back of my head that I would want to write for. So I kind of jumped at that, and we very quickly said, okay, this is what we're going to do, and I talked it over with Moses, and I think we got sort of a good sense of each other's expectations, and set to work pretty much immediately.
I did not know much of Timo until this project. And it's been a wonderful discovery for me personally, to get to know his music by listening to it first, and then having a really exciting phone conversation where we talked on great variety of subjects, from of course cooking and food, because he's a great cook, turns out, but also about, of course, music. Not only his music, but the music that he likes. I mean, he's definitely an American composer. You can hear it from, that identity from his pages, from his music. And we found relatively quickly some common composers that we both adore, such as, Copland and Charles Ives. And it is kind of amazing to, while working and playing now housework, to hear clearly influence and almost like a dialogue, conversation in a very witty way that Timo is having with these great composers.
I was immediately very interested in that project. I didn't know the Pogosians, but I loved the family of five idea. I'm from a family of five. It's a very familiar dynamic to me, and kind of thinking about all being kind of cooped up in the same house together for who knows how long.
Because I thought I was just gonna be stuck here forever, and now I'm not.
Oh, wow.
And I'll be leaving, and so now it's like, oh, like I get to shoot hoops in my backyard. Like I don't get to do that anywhere else. So a regular 23-year-old, living at home with the parents and playing Bartok quartet, it's normal, right?
Not exactly a typical professional situation. I mean, it's a sort of a family thing. It's a little bit of a project. It's like a group project rather than like a gig. So I did want to be especially sensitive and like really give the Pogosians something that they would enjoy working on together, that would be challenging in a fun way but not in a stressful way, and that would sort of reward the sort of this forced chamber music dynamic of all being quarantined together.
Well, I love it. I'm so glad that we could get him to write this for us and get to put it together. And I love the variations. It's very nice. Every single one of them has a different character, and it's nice to have, different things to like, for example, there's a lot of really fun polyrhythms in there, and cool grooves and funky harmonies and very nice harmonies as well, and it's just a different musical language than, for example, Brahms Clarinet Quintet or a Mozart Clarinet Quintet. And hopefully this will become a part of that canon for that instrumentation. But it's very fun. It's very fun to play, and it's nice to get in the groove, with the family.
Fun to play?
Yeah.
Hard to play?
It's actually, no, it's not that hard. It's come a long way because the first time we heard it was on the MIDI file.
Uh-huh.
So of course, whenever you hear anything on a MIDI file, it's like, oh, yeah. I mean, no matter what it is, if you listen on a MIDI file, it's gonna sound like I never want to play this. But luckily, it doesn't sound like that in person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll play it a lot more. If we ever have like family concerts or anything like that, because it has a little bit of everything in there, beautiful lyricism, the alive rhythms, and some funny parts and some serious parts and beautiful parts. So yeah, it's been great fun putting it together.
Since I am also a performer, I like to be a little more hands-on, in both arrangements, either when I'm performing a new work by someone else, or if I'm creating a new work for someone. Even if it's just like, oh, what other music are you going to present alongside? I like to know that. I like to take the venue into account, and obviously, in this case, the venue is very much kind of part of the conception of the piece and the presentation of the piece. And, due to the circumstances, we're all sort of acting as our own presenter.
Yes. Yeah. I miss playing for audiences, but knowing that, there's the video camera and we're playing it and there will be people listening as if it is a concert. It's nice to have that energy. And when you're playing music you love, like all these 3 pieces that we're playing, we love them. And so it's very easy to get in the moment and just give it your all. And so we hope that comes across in the video. And
I had coincidentally been sort of in the Theme and Variations world in my teaching, just sort of over the past couple of months with my composition students. With a couple of them, I'd sort of been looking at Theme and Variations and various models for that as a way of just kind of working on development.
The clarinet quintets that I play nowadays, it tends to fall kind of towards the strings accompanying the clarinet, or being separate from one another. And what I love about Timo's piece is we're all just kind of playing with each other, playing on the different articulations and variations of the theme, and it feels like we're all kind of one mass, but also five people trying to find their way together. It doesn't feel like 4 versus 1.
I had an earlier commission that I had sort of just begun working on, that was for a similar group. It was like a string sextet. And that was canceled pretty early on, like beginning of beginning of March, actually, that was canceled because it was for a European group. And so I had these sketches for what actually became the end of Housework. But I liked the idea, and I thought I could apply it to the new piece as well. And it just it was this very simple tune in what I thought of as a Pavan treatment. This sort of slow, sort of back and forth dance. it wasn't necessarily that I set out to write a theme and variations. It's more that the theme and variations kind of revealed itself to me as I worked on the piece. It felt like that was what the material was telling me it wanted to be, and there ended up being these very clear sort of points of demarcation in between just how the phrases were arranged that felt like that cadence at the end of a variation where it's like there's a certain like tying a bow on it, but it also feels like it propels you forward to the next thing. And so then it pretty quickly became like, okay, this is going to be this sort of pocket theme and variations. And then the challenge sort of became like, how do I give it the scope that you want in a theme and variations, where you have sort of this variety of treatments and you sort of go on this little journey with the material, but still fit it inside those 7 or 8 minutes, which was I think we decided would be sort of an appropriate length for the venue and the presentation and so forth. So it ended up being I think quite a compact piece that it gets a lot done in a short amount of time, and maybe feels like it contains more material than it actually does. Yeah, it was never going to be Goldberg variations. I almost called it pocket variations because I like this idea of this sort of very very compact sort of modular design that could that almost felt like like a pop-up tent or something, that it's like, oh, all that was in was in that little theme. There's always a certain distance between what's in your head and what's in the score and what the musicians read from the score. And even though you get sort of better at triangulating that with experience, there's always a little bit of adjustment that needs to be made of like, oh, I thought that idea that I had would be obvious from how I wrote it, but actually it wasn't. Like, actually it didn't convey this crucial piece of information. When I send comments, it's mainly things like that, and then I'll go back on my end and like actually finagle the notation a little so that for future performers they know exactly what I meant.
Playing with family is kind of it's kind of incomparable in a way, just because there's a lot there. It's kind of like this infinite little circle of I want to say understanding. I don't know, or just it's us. It's not going to get any more personal than that. But then when obviously playing with strangers, I don't want to say, or playing with people you didn't grow up with is obviously incredible, because the people who come from different backgrounds, people have different ideas. Actually discussing that is really important, and that's what leads to people forming their own ideas and kind of altering and broadening their way of thinking and playing. So you need both, and I guess that's horrible for me to say because not everyone can play with their families. But I guess that's also on the level of just talking with your family members and having these bonds with them. Like, there are certain things that are almost like sacred within your families, that it's within you guys. It's something you can all relate to on like a very deep level. And I think for us, that's music. It's one of the things that we can kind of use to unify us.
There's definitely a level of political incorrectness when we rehearse together, just because we've lived with each other for so long, and it's really no filter as opposed to when you work with people at school or in festivals. It's more of a social setting like that. Like at home we're all comfortable, so we don't try hard to make others happy like you do in rehearsals with people who aren't your family members. Yeah, so it's not always the most respectful place, but like the thing is we all know each other, so we understand why people react or why they say things, because we all have very different personalities, but we're all familiar with them. So
they sent me a couple rehearsal recordings sort of over the course of learning the piece, and the most recent one they sent, which I think you recorded, had a little bit of the talking on either side of the run through, which was extremely raucous and just like very like I suddenly felt like I was like in this family dynamic just from this little random excerpt of conversation that I had before and after.
Yes? Okay, so Anush, say something to Helen.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, Helen.
We love you so much.
This is your piece.
I would say this run through is dedicated to you, but
It's
in
for
the,
you
in
and
case
your
it goes
plumber.
badly. I don't know.
Why would it go badly?
I don't know, Mom.
You have to say that.
Oh my god.
That's how she talks.
Sus means be quiet.
In a very loving way.
And it gave me such a sort of warm feeling of suddenly getting a feeling for like the different personalities in this family, who of course I've still never met in real life, and yeah, it really made me feel closer to them. Just this like 15 seconds of audio.
We're just so lucky and so blessed that we are in the position that we are. For parents, to not worry about their own children who are somewhere in danger or under some, difficult situations, but here they are with us, and we see them on a daily basis. We can be sure that they're fine. And not only that, but for musicians, not just to be stuck alone and to a diet of scales and unaccompanied Bach, but for us to sit in this very room and to say, oh, it feels like Haydn, or let's read maybe a Beethoven Opus 18.
It's been nice being home, playing this music. It's sad to me that it took me realizing I was going to go back to real life to realize how nice I have it here, and lucky I am to be doing this stuff. So, yeah, I just wish it was good to enjoy the times we're in, with all the bad stuff that's going on. Good to take, be appreciative of the good stuff that we have and the things we're very lucky for. And I'm lucky to play this music here.